I'd now like to introduce Jennifer Sutey. She was born in Bracebridge, Ontario, Canada, and achieved dual science degrees from the University of Calgary in psychology and zoology. She's working towards using both those degrees in a startup anthrozoology-based business called Biothink Australia, where she's passionate about population control, management of pest species, and how a mutual relationship can be obtained between these pests and people through compassionate means. She sits on the executive committee of West Australian Pet Project Incorporated as secretary, and also Spay It Forward program coordinator, where she strives to run the highest volume desexing program in the state. So welcome, Jennifer.
Try to get used to using this thing and speaking on a microphone. So this is one of my very first conferences. A little bit nervous. But I'm also very pleased to see so many people here listening to me speak about something I've been doing for almost 2 years now, and I'm so incredibly passionate about. So thank you for attending, and thank you to the organizers for allowing me to speak about this. So I am here today to tell you about running this program that has been introduced as Spay It Forward for the West Australian Pet Project, and also all the stories that go along with running this crazy program. So I'll introduce you first to Molly and Molly's story.
Yeah, Molly was like his best friend, right? Like if he lost her, he'd be lost. Molly was really, really sick, and didn't know what was wrong with her, and he told me that she got antibiotics, he thought she was getting better, and then she then got worse, got sick again, and
I remember when she was sick as well, like pushing up there, and she was depressed, she didn't move around, she didn't look like she was comfortable. And her skin actually, her hair, she had all patches all over. I'm not sure if that's the same thing, but yeah.
She wouldn't eat, she was lethargic. He remember Carrie contacting you guys to see if you guys could help with giving her the operation, and I remember you contacted me while she was having the operation and saying she's back at home now and she's all good and her health's really improved and she's so happy now. I just like her.
So that was Molly. We were very lucky at that time to have a considerable amount of funding, and so we forked out the couple $1,000s to save her life. One of the things that really touched me about that story was just the fact that there is an aspect of one welfare to what we're doing in this program. So what I mean is, one welfare is an idea that a lot of vets talk about. So I came across it when I was actually scrolling through Google, and I found that all the universities in Australia had this website about getting together and talking to vets about one welfare. And what they were doing was trying to get vets, obviously advocate for animals, but getting them to try and recognize the contributions to welfare that animals make to people's welfare through companionship. And I thought, gosh, that's kind of what we're doing here. That's exactly what we're doing with the Spay It Forward program. We're dealing with people and we're dealing with animals, and the two are very much interconnected. And when I first got into this role of Spay It Forward program coordinator, I thought, oh, this could be so easy. All I have to do is go to the vet and set up all these appointments, and yeah, no worries, I can do that. I've been foster caring for a while, and I know my vets, and yeah, this will be easy. What I didn't realize is the mental health aspect that people have when they are dealing with undesexed pets. So sometimes my phone is now busy between 6 a.m. and midnight, and people are wondering what's going on with their appointments. Are they going to get subsidy? Are they, they can't afford it? What happens when they have 2 mixed sex animals in their house? They're generally concerned about the welfare of their pets, even though they can't afford to get the necessary veterinary care. And so afterwards, I started again seeing this trend of these messages that came in. So this is actually a page from some of our promotional material where people have written back and said, you know, I have immense gratitude. Thank you so much for what you've done. I've just had this weight lifted off my shoulders. So again, there's this aspect of one welfare and what we're doing involving people and animals to get a common result, a better result for both, because as we know, desexing improves animal health, but we're now improving people's mental health in this program. So this is one thing I'm going to just leave there for now and come back to later. We set up the Spay It Forward program as a surgical desexing program. So it was surgical desexing that we chose because the AVA recognizes it as the only current widely available effective permanent method to prevent breeding. And while there is so many solutions to overpopulation, it's not simple, it's not broadly applicable, and it ranges in cost, but that's basically why we started with surgical desexing. It also utilizes a network of vets that we already had at WA Pet Project, so we could have an immediate start. We could get on the ground and get running and get people's pets that needed desexing assistance into those clinics. The cost was a little bit more to use already established clinics, but again, it comes down to supporting your veterinarians and your partners in those small businesses that will in turn support you with all the rescued animals that you get in. And the quote that I have there is by Simon Sinek. I don't know if anyone's familiar with his TED Talk, but it's really interesting that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And at WA Pet Project, what we want and what we envision is a world where rescues no longer exist. And this is why the Spay It Forward program fit in so well with what WA Pet Project was doing and why we started it. It's because we want to treat the cause of overpopulation, which we took a stab at and said was going to be undesexed, owned animals in a population of people that couldn't afford veterinary care. So we wanted to try and prevent, again, those unwanted owned animals from entering the community-supported population. WA Pet Project also has an adoption program, which was pretty important to why it was good to have a desexing program, an adoption program model. There is actually a study about this by an author named Frank, who has a mathematical population flow model, which took into account economic and ecological factors in human and dog populations, and tried to figure out what the best route was to reduce dog overpopulation through end euthanasia. And he actually found that pairing your desexing program with an adoption program was the best result. So again, that's how this Spay It Forward program by the West Australian Pet Project all came together. So just a little bit more about the program, getting down into the specifics. So we do have three things to our backbone of our program. We are looking for it to be high quality, so we're dealing with those high quality veterinary practices. It needs to be high volume, and it also needs to be low cost. So those are the things we're constantly striving for. There is inclusion criteria for the people that apply. So again, as I mentioned probably before, we are looking to get people who have a concession card. They have to have a concession card to access our program. For West Australia, that means 925,000 people can possibly apply. So we're needing a lot of funding, in case anyone knows any. And yeah, they have to be a resident of WA, and you also have to be over 18 years of age. So again, we've got this assumption that people in that bracket are not able to be able to afford desexing and veterinary care. Some of the barriers that we were looking at, so I guess we made that one assumption, but what else are we looking at? So what else is stopping people from getting in the car and taking Fluffy to the vet to get desexed? That's what we were really curious about. So trying to look at two things, non-physical and physical barriers. Physical being something like, well, maybe they don't have a car to get Fluffy to the vet. And the other one is, are there attitudes stopping them from getting there? So is it a belief about desexing, like maybe it's unnatural and so therefore they don't do it? Like what's going on? That's what we were trying to get at. So the idea really is once we can find out what the barriers are, we can start removing them. what I've done in the study, so the study I'll talk about next, basically we've divided all of our applicants into these like 6 different groups. So there's dog and cat owners, that was one division. Then we looked at males and females, and then we looked at age brackets. So 18 to 34, 34 to 54, and then over 54. And we tried to see, is there something about these groups? Can we almost like profile these people so that we know how to target those barriers, like find out what those barriers are within those groups, target them, overcome them. And so how we got all this information is through a SurveyMonkey survey. It's technically our application. So everyone has to fill out the application to be able get assistance through the program. So a little bit about cats and dogs and what sort of data are we getting, basically. I guess what I fell out from the data is that we got a lot of information about some groups and not a lot about a few others for some reason. So that's something to go back and talk about maybe at another time and why this isn't working, but I am here to talk to you about what did result. So getting straight into it, basically we found out that females of any age are getting these undesexed animals as strays, gifts from Gumtree, and other avenues. So mostly that was like Facebook or friends and family. If I were to talk to you about dogs and the physical barriers, those were coming from sort of a slightly different areas. So Gumtree, Facebook family, but breeders and personal rescues. So someone who rescued a stray, or someone who feels like they rescued that dog from a breeding operation, something like that. Going back to cats, what happened to those litters? So there was about 33% of our applicants for cats have applied after their cat has had a litter of kittens, and what's happening to them? So what we were looking for is the word sold. So it's a blank field in our application where people can actually write us and tell us what they did, and they're not actually selling them. They are rehoming them, but they're not rehoming them through rescues. And they're not surrendering to rescues. They're not really keeping these pets either, and none of them have died, which were some of the things we looked at. But yeah, they are rehoming them privately. For dogs, it was sort of similar. So I don't know if this was, I'll have to go back and revisit this, if this is completely correct. But we did have females of all ages were not selling their dogs. But we had males 18 to 34 that were considering rehoming them. And I feel like that sort of missed the mark, because we do have, I do know, in speaking to all the applicants, we've gotten to the point where I do speak to every single person now, or try to have individual contact with them, and that selling, they probably are selling them, but they consider it rehoming. So anyway, we'll have to sort of try and get a more accurate measure on that next time. But again, still looking at physical barriers to desexing, we have noticed that we ask for vet visits, like, so has your pet been to the vet? And we found out that male owners of cats and dogs are actually less likely to take their pets to the vet. Why? That's another avenue to investigate later on, as I said. Is it because they need transport help? Well, female owners aged 18 to 34 do not believe they need help doing transport, same with dog owners. Is it a transport carrier that's involved, or they just don't have the equipment to get to the vet, to get to where they need to go? That's not actually the case either. So males and females that are cat and kitten owners, 35 to 54, do own their own pet carriers. Males that are 18 to 34 do own their own pet carriers, so that's not it. And I guess there's a lot more that I could talk about, but what I wanted to get to is those non-physical barriers. So what is it that could people be thinking about when they try to get to desexing their pet? We looked at why people are desexing now. So why have they filled out this application? Is it ethical reasons? Do they have behavioral problems? The vet recommended it. The ranger was going to find them. And in fact, the behavioral, is it the right age, vet advice, and ranger we had no significant results for those. So people are not doing it because those reasons are applying for those reasons. They're not considering ethical reasons, so we got a lot of people, we did have applications that said it's the right thing to do, but that isn't actually the main reason why they're desexing. And from the results, actually, I can tell you more about what people don't believe than what they do believe. So females 18 to 34, they didn't have the intention to and couldn't afford it anyways. We have people that have said that they can afford it, that it isn't like, it's not, sorry, they can't. I'm watching the 5 minutes come up and I'm like, oh, I have so much to talk about. So basically, it's not to prevent disease either, and it's not to prevent litters. So we've had all these applications come through and it said all of these things, but we're not actually getting a significant result about why people are doing it. It's why what they aren't considering. So maybe what we need to go back and do, again, is try to break down and get more information. Obviously, we'll need to get more information on how we can better assess what the thoughts are, or is it that they're all just spread out and there's not really one thing going on? How do we target that better? So to try and wrap up a bit, what I'm trying to get out of this and what I'm trying to get you to take home as the message from this talk is basically that one welfare idea, that we have to consider human behavior change. That it's about involving the people. So it's not just about trying to, although I love foster programs, and Rosemary has done a great job about talking to you about them, it's about trying to get those people in the community that have those undesexed pets engaged in what you're doing. We need an interdisciplinary approach. So we're talking about marketing, education. How do we get all these people involved, science especially, to get new programs out to the community, more targeted, that are better than just a widespread approach and putting all your manpower into it. So what I want you to think about is, and encourage you to do, is human-animal relationships are important. Think about your organization and how you can involve people to get a better result at how we can get these pets desexed. Because the problem is overpopulation. The cause is undesexed pets. We need to target the problem at the cause before we even get the pets into foster care. And the solution is Spay It Forward. Thank you.